Welcome to Modern Wisdom with Dawn Ricci. I'm Dawn Ricci, a spiritual mentor, healer, psychic, and medium. My podcast is all about empowering you with spiritual insights on health, wellness, relationships, and careers. Join me and my guests as we navigate life's twists and turns, sharing wisdom and expanding knowledge together. Hit subscribe now to stay updated and never miss an episode. Hey everyone! Tonight, my friend and fellow medium friend Juan Francisco is here, and he's here to share his story about how he was called to the work of spirit. And he details this all in his first episode of his fabulous podcast, and it's called Third Eye Sight, which I absolutely love the name. I love Juan, and it's just super insightful podcast, and I want you all to listen to it too. So Juan is a practicing medium and he's a tarot card reader. He has a passion for the paranormal and loves historical spots. I met Juan through a mutual friend and I felt very connected when we first started to talk. Juan has always felt spirit's presence in his life, but it was really when he was in his 20s that his third eye opened. It was then Ron realized he could experience the images and sensations that come from the spirit world. Juan lives and works in New York City with his dog, Sela. Is it Sela?
Sella.
Sela. With his dog, Sela, and a collection of crystals. And I do want to hear about Sela. So, oh my God, Juan, so good to see you, love. I am so happy that we could sit together and do this again. So thank you for being here.
Thank you. It's an honor. And we had such a great conversation on my podcast. And I was so excited when you invited me onto yours. And yes, Sella will probably make an appearance here and there. She jumps up during podcast interviews.
I definitely, I always like dip into the pause of like energy, of animal energy. So I'm sure that will happen. Where are you? Anyway, so good to see you again, but I'll dive right in. Give us the backstory. What brought spirit into your awareness?
Sure. Yeah. Just to preface what the story I'm about to share, and here comes Sella, her little pitter patter paws, coming to greet me. So I always was fascinated by the other side since I was a very, very little kid. And I remember being as young as 3 or 4 years old and hearing from my parents, your grandmother's watching out for you, your uncle, the uncle I was named after on my father's side, he's looking out for you, he's around you. And so I was very aware of family on the other side being very present in my life because of the way my parents raised me. And it was a very spiritually progressive household. I think the basis of it was Roman Catholicism, but we weren't practicing Catholics. I would hear the name Jesus, the name Mary, but we didn't have religion in the household.
Oh,
And
great.
so I just remember just being fascinated growing up into my adolescence and college years, always watching like paranormal shows, wanting to hear more about psychics and mediums. I went through a very intense born again Christian phase in high school into college, where I really separated myself from all of that and considered it evil. And I had this very big moment with that experience, and it was a way for me to deal with my discomfort being a young gay kid. I was in
Oh,
the closet. I had a lot of
yeah.
shame around that, and that was my way of dealing with it. And I guess I would say, unfortunately, that's how I dealt with it. But I know it's part of my journey and who I am today. And once I came out of the closet and I was comfortable being open as a gay man, my life just opened up, and my spiritual journey. I was gonna say it started, but I mean everything's a part of a spiritual journey, right? So that a new phase of my spiritual journey started. And I started reading the books Conversations with God by Neil Donald Walsh. And I think we've talked about those books. I love those books. And
Yeah.
they really changed my young adulthood and my experience of my life then. And fast forward to 2019, the mutual friend that you mentioned, Natalie Namaste. I love her. I adore her. She gave me a tarot card reading, me and another friend tarot card readings in 2019, and I was just wowed by what she had told me. I had actually seen my father reading tarot cards when I was growing up, but he had just stopped all of a sudden. I'm not sure why. And so I was not unfamiliar with tarot, but it was definitely new territory for me getting a reading from her. And this is also many years after going through that born again Christian phase where I thought all this stuff was evil. So it was sort of new territory for me in that respect too, in terms of my comfort level. But I was so impressed by the reading, and I just had this deep interest in wanting to learn how to read tarot. So I did that during 2020. The pandemic started, things were on shut down and on lockdown. I had all this time after being laid off from a job, a bunch of time to apply for jobs and also learn tarot. So that's what I did. And I started reading for friends towards the end of 2020, early 2021. And it was actually in the middle of a reading with Natalie because I was just reading my friends and she was one of the first friends I read. In a reading with Natalie, I pulled the strength card. And what came to me immediately, being that it's the card that is also symbolic of the Leo sign in astrology, I just told her, I'm getting the Leo sign with this card, and is there someone in your life who's very significant, for better or for worse, who is a Leo? And she mentioned the name of a friend who had unfortunately passed. Now, I had known about this friend that unfortunately their life was taken from them in the year or two prior to this reading. I knew their first name and I knew where they passed. That's all I knew, and that they were a very close family friend of her family's. And she mentioned this name, and I just told her a message that was very uplifting from him. And at that time, I had not been paying for Zoom. So the Zoom room closed at the 45-minute mark. We actually didn't finish the reading.
Ah.
Uh, so the Zoom room closes, and I felt like, okay, well, this was meant to happen. It's just, it ended. And I still felt his energy in the room, and I'd never felt this in my life. Never had an experience like this in my life where I felt like someone was with me, but there's no one physically with me. And I started getting these images, memories of the two of them just coming out of nowhere, and hearing music that I felt like was connected, that they connected over together. And so I asked her, was there a song that you both had that was like your song? She said, oh my God, well, I actually just last week bought the vinyl version of our favorite album. I thought, okay, well, this is him confirming his presence. And I never done this before. I never either tried to be a medium or ever did a mediumship reading. And then once that conversation in text, this was in text with her now, where she was confirming that, she answered that. And then all of a sudden I felt this intense pain in one temple in my head. And this is a violent description I'm about to say, but I just felt like, okay, I feel like I'm getting this feeling and visual being shot in the head. And I started to freak out, but not in a like I was scared or like this was something bad. I wanted to share this with her as validation, but I just was so nervous. I didn't want to re-traumatize her. I didn't want to upset her. And I texted a mutual friend of ours who had met this person who had passed. And I told her, look, I'm feeling this, and this is what I'm getting. Do you know how he passed? And she said, I think that's how he was shot. And I thought, actually, let me look up news articles because I have a feeling this was in the news somewhere. And I think Natalie had told me it had made some news, and I looked up a news article, and the news article said he was shot in the head. And I didn't tell her for a week that I had felt that sensation because I was so nervous about saying that to her. And I told her a week later, just want to say, what happened last week was really cool, but I did feel this, and I looked it up and it confirmed what I was feeling. And I just want you to know that I really feel he's around you. And she was so thankful. And that was the start of my journey practicing as a medium. I was 29, 28, 29. So this was something that I discovered this ability in my late 20s. And I think the last thing I'll say, I know I'm talking a lot, but the last thing I'll say is,
no, I love it. I love it. Go ahead.
Yeah, I feel like, okay, if this can happen to me at 28, 29, how can this not happen for other people? And I do believe there are people who are born with the ability to like see people at the foot of their bed and hear their names being called out of nowhere as children. But I do believe we are all psychic, and I do believe we can all connect with the other side. I think the propensity of, or the extent to which each of us can do that is different. Like I
Mhm.
think I said it on our episode together on
Yeah.
my podcast, that there are different types of singers. There are good singers, and a good singer can sound different from the next good singer. They're both singers. I think we're all psychic. We're all mediums to an extent. It's just it may look or feel different. And so if the reason I created my podcast is, well, if I can discover this at the age of 28, 29, maybe someone else can too. And maybe I can be part of introducing this to somebody's life so they can discover this ability for themselves. So I believe we all have access to this. And I like to think I'm living proof of that. And I want to keep spreading that message that we can tap in.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Well, that's my goal too. I mean, yeah, I feel really blessed that that I've been able to open myself up and feel the feelings, and do this good work and help people and bring hope to the world, bring hope to your clients. But at the end of the day, yeah, I like to get paid for it. Absolutely. Right. We should, as we should. But at the end of the day, giving someone peace of mind is really most rewarding. It really is. All right, I am not going to let you get away with a lot of what you said because I'm going to back up for a few other things. So, do you believe that all right, so you said that you did not want to you didn't want to you gave up thinking on the spiritual path because you felt that you weren't worthy at the time because you were still in the closet, correct? Right? So you had no choice. Spirit like said, okay, he wants to put it back in he wants to put baby back in the box. Okay, he can put that, but it's not going to stay that way because at the end of the day, you always have to live your truth. The truth is you were a gay man, you weren't living your truth. And so you had no other reason but to put it, to hide it, to drop probably the thing that you would have loved most and put it away because you couldn't be yourself, right?
Right.
So thank God that you did come to realize, and it was probably at that time, it was probably just a maturity thing. That's probably really what it was. You weren't ready. It was hard, it's hard to like actually take the heat, like and be honest with yourself and then, the consequences that used to come with it. Now, thank God, it's all fine and dandy, pretty much so.
Yeah.
But you
And
know what I'm saying. I
yeah.
mean, on a scale, it's a little bit much better. But
Yeah.
so good for you. And I'm certainly glad that you didn't, tuck it away forever. Because at the end of the day, you would have had to come back on another life and do it all over again and find out all over again that you were psychic, and that
I
you are a
agree.
medium, that.
Yeah.
So yeah, I really love that and respect that story because that just goes to show you how any healing that you needed to do, you did the work. And you'll find going forward that whatever, you know, like 3 steps, what's it saying? 3 steps back, 2 steps forward, 3 steps back. So with anything, when you're catapulting yourself in the development, and I find it too, I think I'm healed until I'm triggered again,
Oh yeah.
you know? And so I find myself, I'm like, some days I'm like, why do I even do this? Like, why? Because that's what we're supposed to do. We're changing the world.
Right.
And you wouldn't believe that there's such a huge amount of push of spirituality. Um, Everyone in the spiritual world, whether it's psychic, medium, tarot, crystals, learning about energy, healers, Reiki. There's such a big push since COVID because I really feel that there was like a reset button that happened and it gave us all time to explore something we would have never explored if we had to, be in the rat race that we are, back into now, with daily lives being back to normal.
Yeah.
So if my history might be off and you're the history person, so you might like to look this up, but there was, I believe, in the 1800s, there was a Spanish flu. There was a
Yeah,
Spanish flu, it
I
was an
think,
epidemic or
or
something.
19,
It
was
was
maybe 1912. I forget. Yeah.
maybe was the Spanish flu. And during that time when everything was in their version of a lockdown, spirituality really rose then too. There was a huge, a huge push for it then too.
Well, same with the Civil War. After the Civil War, so many people lost so many. At that time, it was men who were in the army fighting. So many men died, and it's so common to hear of tales and stories of people doing seances right after the Civil War ended. The Fox sisters, I
Yes.
believe, occurred right after the Civil War, if I'm not mistaken. So it seems like, and there's a lot of theories that a lot of what happened back then was fake, but whether it was fake or not, there was an interest in connecting with the other side. And I think with COVID, unfortunately, there was so much loss, and there was also so much time to ourselves, time for reflection, time to grieve together or grieve alone, that I think it's like in an individual person's life. Like in my life, I went through such, honestly, like self-hatred and self-loathing, and thank goodness I came out the other side wanting to spiritually rejuvenate. And same thing on a societal level, we go through such hard things in history as societies, as cultures, that if we do things the right way, we come out the other side with a reawakening or a societal awakening to something. I think COVID, not that COVID had to happen for that to be the case, but I think it's no surprise that so many reawakenings happened during and after COVID, because the tough times really make us reflect.
Hey, if you haven't already done so, check out my website at dawnricci.com where you can book your appointment with me. If you need expert guidance in finding your own spirituality, or maybe thinking about getting back on track with health and well-being, then let's get to it with customized mentoring programs for your personal development. You can find all the information you need at dawnricci.com. Now let's get back to the show. And we had that time of being alone. I did have a conversation today that, a lot of healing for everyone had to happen. Whether you experienced a loved one that you lost during that time, or experiencing the loneliness that you had to deal with, or losing your job, losing your house, everything. Um, there was a lot of healing that had to go on there. So there was a lot of stagnant energy, obviously, but there was a lot of strumming up of new energy. And I really feel that there was a download of new forces, for lack of a better word, for us to catapult into the next level. You
Yeah, I
know,
think so too.
yeah. I really feel strongly about that. And it's, if you're doing this work, and if you're believing in yourself, if you're doing the work on yourself and you're healing yourself, and that's anybody out there, if you're doing the work on yourself, there's nowhere else but to go up. Seriously, like you have to reflect on what's happening in your life, and then you can see that, you can see beyond the cloudy days, right?
Yeah, self-healing work, which is ongoing, like you said, it's not a destination, it's a life journey.
It
But
is.
healing work with myself has helped me become a better reader.
Well, it's funny you should say that, because one of my questions was that for you was, that's where spirit forces us to reflect, because at the end of the day, well, let me just say this. I loved your podcast about milestones. I loved that. I thought that was really, it was so good. It was really touching. I just loved that. But that also made me feel that, you know, um, it made you grow as a better medium, because you had to, you had to, think about, you can't fix somebody else. I'm trying to say how I want to say it. You can't fix somebody else if you're not fixed yourself, right? You can't
Right.
understand somebody else's grief if you haven't resolved your own grief. And being in the work that you do, or that we do, we deal with grief and change and heartache and sadness and sorrow, people's sadness and sorrow, people's love all the time. So we have to be able to experience all those things and learn from it.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
just had a reading recently, and this was a tarot card reading because I also read tarot. I read tarot, and in the reading, the topic of marital infidelity came up,
Mhm.
and look, I have my opinions about people's life experiences, the decisions they make, but because I've gotten to a point where like I've been working on myself to a point where I got more self-love to grow within myself, but I can confidently say I love myself way more than I did a year ago and in a healthy way.
Yeah.
And because I love myself and I recognize my humanity, when like a topic like infidelity, excuse me, comes up with a client, I may have my opinions, but I'm thinking, well, I'm here to be a healer and I'm here to empower this person. And my human opinions need to take a back burner, and I'm not going to judge them because I know what it's like to be judged, and I'm not here to judge the person. They're here to get healing, and I'm here to help them in their healing process. And so I think years ago, I would have had so much trouble reading somebody with that topic coming up in the reading because I would have just let my ego step in. And look, it's not to say that I condone marital infidelity. It's not about that because I have
No,
my
it's not.
opinions and I have my own choices that I would and would not make regarding that in my own life. But that's the thing, that's my life.
But
And the best, what I'm there to do is uplift and empower somebody to make the best decisions for themselves. And that means my judgment has to take a backseat because that's just my ego. And so that's where the self-healing work. Oh, my light just went out. Interesting. Let's put this one on. That's where my self-healing work has really played a huge role because I see myself as more than just a human with problems, which yes, problems are important. Got to feel the things, feel the sadness, but so is the next person. So what my clients are human too, and they deserve the healing. They deserve the same experience of healing within themselves that I'm experiencing.
well, I love that because you know what, you're actually touching upon ethics and ethics with mediums and psychics, which is a big it's a big thing for for our industry, especially with the topic of infidelity. A lot of our clients come in and they want to know the scoop. They want to know, did he not, did she not. And no, at the end of the day, sometimes you may feel that it might have happened or whatever. There is a really fine line of, explaining how that could possibly be, because you never want somebody to go home and think that their spouse like cheated on them, you know, and until you have that in black and white, you know what I mean? And that's my like detective head talking, but so it's a very, very fine line. And yeah, I don't judge it either because at the end of the day, we all have our mistakes and we all have our rewards. And it's however you choose. It's no judgment zone. Things happen all the time like that. So,
Exactly.
it is. You talked about your own soul growth, and I wanted to see if you had to explain where you were. You said a little bit, you touched upon it a little bit. You explained where you were, say, 2 years ago to now. Where do you see yourself in the next 3 to 5 years?
Oh, I love that question. Um,
Soul growth.
yeah, I've never given that I haven't given that thought yet, and this is a good reason to give it thought now. Um, you know, I so I'll be very honest. I really right now, and I know it sounds cheesy, but I am really the happiest I've ever been in my life right now. And it's not because I'm making more money. It's not because I have a new place to live in or a car. Things have remained the same, but I really grew up with a sense of low self-worth, and I grew up in an environment where the adults around me functioned from a place of their own sense of self-worth that was pretty low. And in the past year, I went through, I think actually the last time you and I talked, I had just had a breakup, or I think, but I had a relationship in the last year, and it was my first relationship in 6, 7 years. And there's a reason I'm mentioning a romantic relationship. Uh, I had avoided romantic relationships for those 6, 7 years because I was very afraid of being vulnerable, afraid of taking risks. And I did last year. It didn't work out, but I grew so much from it. And I learned just what I deserve in another person, but deserve from life. And it's not coming from a place of entitlement, it's coming from a place of, I'm worth just as much as the next person on earth, and we all deserve and are worthy of happiness. And so I say that in answer to your question. It's a part A to my answer. Uh, because it's almost hard for me to imagine what's next from here because I am in such a good place right now that I didn't think that this was ever possible for me to be this happy within myself. And
Um,
so I want to say as a part B now, like what do I see in 3 to 5 years? I could just only hope for I'm always working on myself. I'm never gonna 110% love myself, and there's gonna be days I'm gonna be like Juan, you idiot. There's gonna be some negative self-talk days, and that's okay. Ups and downs, it's a roller coaster. But I hope in 3 to 5 years that there will have been something like I feel like I just had this breakthrough in the last 3 or 4 months, which is why I'm where I am at today. And I hope that in, let's say, 3 years from now, there will have been another breakthrough that I can't even think of now, another step that I can't think of right now that gets me that much closer to even a bigger sense of self-fulfillment. And I hope that that leads me to like I have hopes of being on stage and talking to people like TED Talk style, or like I don't know, maybe teaching in some capacity and
oh my God, do you know what I
seminars.
was gonna say that? I was
Oh,
gonna
really?
tell you, I was gonna say, dude, I'm seeing you on the stage.
Well, I mean, I grew up wanting to be an actor. So, and I just did a theater production. So I hope that my soul growth leads me to a place where I have even more self-confidence and comfort within myself to be in front of people and saying, I'm going to give it my best shot. And if it lands, it lands. If it doesn't, it doesn't. And that's okay. Uh, so whether it's being on stage or just a new step in my career as a psychic medium, uh, whatever it looks like, I hope that my soul growth continues in a way where I'm expanding in my life and expanding in inner expansion, yes, but that it shows in my outside my body, my outer
It-
life too.
Listen, I'm telling you. So as you know, and I know listeners that will think the same too. You know, when you're in this industry, I have yet to really, I don't know, maybe birds of a feather flock together. I feel like Spirit just said, well, not everybody, but most of us do have very big hearts, right? Most of us really do. And you have a very big heart.
Thank
And that is why you end up getting hurt because you give so much of yourself and you have this beautiful heart that's why. And so, you know, the lesson for you is like you have to learn to manage that. You know, like you have to learn to emotionally and physically manage that. So you have to like it's a give and take. So when you have a relationship, you say, okay, well, I give 50, you give 50, and you're not giving 75, 25, because that's where it failed. That's what it feels. And then you always like look at your choices, right? Like for me, I mean, I'm married like 25 years together, 35 years, whatever, 33 years or something. And so old dogs, we're not going nowhere. But there's times I want to look at him. I'm like, seriously? I sort of like, seriously, did you just like not do that? Like, did you just do that? Did you not do that? I can't believe you just like, but even after that many years, there's still give and take. But and it's because we have a really big heart. My husband does have a really big heart too, but sometimes sometimes I want to just strangle him a little, a
I
little.
appreciate that. Well, I hear that and I appreciate what you said. I mean to say, I appreciate what you said about me having a big heart. Yeah, I think that yeah, I have met some psychic mediums who no names, but they have a big heart, but it's almost like their ego is just as big.
Yeah,
And so, and for someone like myself, some people I think have an ego coming from a place of entitlement, and some people have an ego that comes from a place of like low sense of self-worth. So then seeking validation. I was the latter. And I think that when it comes to having a big heart, either being someone who needs to learn to respect boundaries or learn how to set boundaries. I think that's the
yeah,
difference between those two types of personalities. And for me, it's definitely been a journey of setting boundaries and saying, hey, I have a big heart and I function with my heart, like heart on my sleeve,
yeah,
with a lot of love. And I also need to remember not to put myself last on that list. Like,
yeah,
I want to show up for this person, whether it's a partner, another loved one, but also remember I need to show up for myself too.
yeah,
And there's the give and take there as well. So,
yeah.
yeah. And I think as
And that's
mediums,
what happens. And I think,
yeah,
that might, and I think that happens even as a kid. I felt the same way. Like I never put myself first. Everybody else was first. And I mean, I just turned 60 years old. And let me tell you, it took me 60 years to finally say, no, I'm doing this. Like it finally did. And that's just because I finally realized that it's my life too. And I have to make myself happy too and start living my dreams and hopes and everything that I'm hope to conquer, which is also a TED talk.
that's right.
But
Well,
I
you should
will
do,
tell you this.
yeah.
So this is what I think I've learned in the last, like, say, 10 years doing this work. If it isn't authentic, it's never gonna work. You can't like you can't make something up and make something happen if it's not real in your heart or in your soul, if it's not kind of part of your imprint, it's not going to work. And
Not
that
to be
goes with
crass, but
everything in life. It goes with your work life, your relationships, everything, your kids, your family, everything, you know?
I
Yeah.
was just gonna say not to be crass, but BS smells. It smells. So it's you can smell it. So it's and I still have more to work on in that respect because I think this is the year for me of stepping more to my authenticity and thinking about
Yeah.
what do I want my life to look like in the future. So it's very fitting you asked me that soul growth question 3 to 5 years down the road. Uh, but yeah, I think living authentically, I think that's what we're all here to do is to be our authentic selves. Not everyone is meant to be a working psychic medium, but uh, if someone's authenticity shows up in how they love to be an accountant, I don't care what it is. Like as long as that thing you do just you have a drive for it, it excites you. That's where the authenticity lies. I think it goes back to coming back to our child selves. Like what excited us as children? What about life was interesting to us as children? Because I mean, I don't have to tell you, but the child state is such a pure state. It's the closest to uh before coming into this physical body, I believe we were all in heaven and we are reborn, right? And so that child state is the closest that we probably are outside of our elderly stage to that spiritual life we lived, being in the spirit world. And it's like that purity. Can we get back to that purity? Remember what drove us as children, what excited us. I think that's the answer to living authentically as adults too. I think it helps.
Well, when children, I mean, they just come in with unconditional love. They don't have any, they're not mean, they don't understand. It's like, I hate to like make the comparison, but it's like our animals, like our pets, they just unconditional love, it's just, so
Yeah.
that's how children are. That's why, spirit will show themselves to children, because they're just so open and, um, yeah, they're open vessels. It's just amazing. Oh, I love the soul growth and I love the fact that I'm so glad that you said about, you know, being on stage or doing something in that effect, because I really feel that that is something so good for you. I could totally see that. I was so glad you said that.
Well, thank you.
Uh, um, okay, so where are we? Let me say. All right, someone who's listening right now, we covered a lot of ground. But somebody who listens right now, if you had to give them, some piece of advice or couple things, piece of advice of what they can take away today, what would it be?
I was very cheesy, but I was gonna say listen to your heart, and then that song came up in my head from the 80s. But really, it's I want to say listen to your heart, get back to basics. What I mean by those two things is, um, I think when trying, like if I'm thinking of a person listening who is trying to find their spiritual path or what they feel is the spiritual path that's meant for them, just going back to the drawing board, which is just coming back to yourself. I'm not the best at meditating. I don't meditate often. I do want to get back to it. So it may sound
Me.
like I have imposter syndrome recommending this, but taking a quiet moment to just sit with yourself and listen and feel like if you're asking yourself what is the right spiritual path for me, what are the right practices, what's the right belief system, even whatever it may be, just coming back to yourself and feeling it in your body. And you may not get an answer immediately, but it's a lily pad step to getting there. And I think that we really do have the answers within us, and your path may not be the same as mine. Like some people believe, like for example, I personally don't know if I really believe in a hell. I do believe in low energy spirits. I
Yeah.
believe they exist, but I don't believe in a hell. Now that may not be someone else's path, and that's okay. I think is that this comes back to authenticity, what authentically speaks to you. And there's so much on social media,
Mm.
there's so many of us on social media and so many messages on social media, and this idea that being a psychic means you're wearing a huge brim hat in the sunshine, namaste on a mountain. Like that's cute and that's great, and if that speaks to you, that's great. But social media, it is all staged, and I'm authentic on social media. I am my real self, but I put the pretty pictures of myself on social media. I redo some videos because that angle wasn't good. My light went out, whatever it might be, uh, like today. But it's like I think two things that really helped me in my journey when I discovered this ability, this mediumship ability. Podcasts. I looked up podcasts on mediumship, and it really, really helped me. And I also read books. And I decided to take what resonated with me and left the rest at the door.
Yep.
And that worked for me. And that's to put a bow on this, listening to your heart and coming back to the basics, which is coming back to yourself and seeing what resonates with you and not putting so much pressure on yourself to follow what the next person does. I mean, if it resonates with you, great, but it doesn't have to be your path.
That's amazing. Yeah. I love that. You're so great. I love you.
Thank
You're great.
you. You are too.
I'm telling you, I'm telling you, we have to do a live. I think that would be a lot of fun.
Love that.
Juan, it was such a pleasure. Thank you so much for being part of this with me. It was so good to see you again.
Thank you. It was a blessing. It was an honor to chat with you. I appreciate it.
Same here.
Hey there, so before we head over to the next episode, I wanted to let you know about my show named Beach Bench Medium, and it's on my YouTube channel. As I passed by beach benches that line the boardwalk, I felt the nudge from Spirit to bring family members to their bench and give them a reading. If you have a bench dedicated to someone you lost, then get in touch with me at hello@dawnricci.com. I would love for you to be on the show. Thanks for listening.